Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today we're going to be starting my 2021 reading wrap-ups with books 1 through 15. If you guys don't know, the way that I do wrap-ups is that I save a certain number of books and then talk about them all in one video. These are shorter miniature reviews of all of the most recent books that I've read. I don't go into spoilers, I don't go fully in depth, I don't do like an entire individual book review for each book, but I give you a couple of pros, a couple of cons, and move along. Since we're already into the 5th month of the year, I figured it was time that I need to start doing wrap-ups and talk about the books that I've read so far. The first book that I read in 2021 is The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. She is more popular for the How to Train Your Dragon series, if you know what that is. In this one, you follow a boy named Czar. He is a wizard, but he doesn't seem to know, like, any magic. He doesn't have any magic yet, and it also follows a warrior named Wish. At the beginning of the book, the two run into each other. Adventure ensues from there. During the course of the book, you find out that warriors and wizards hate each other. Warriors have done some pretty awful things to the other intelligent beings of this world, and so Czar, the wizard boy, really does not like Wish, the warrior girl, at the beginning of the book, but as they're going through their different journeys and stuff, some of those stereotypes and, things start to get broken down, and you start to learn that total groups of people are not the exact same. There's different ideologies and everything like that. Those types of things are explored with these two main characters. Before I read this book, I had not read a single book in months, and I just had no motivation to get into reading, which is kind of a problem when you have a booktube channel. That is also part of the reason why my videos haven't been as consistent. I just really needed something that was fun and quick to get through, and this served that extremely well. I actually listened to the audiobook for this one, and I think that the audiobook narrator did a really good job. I really enjoyed listening to this. I actually listened to this at home, so it wasn't like I was on a car ride and needed something to listen to. I actually ignored my husband while I was doing chores and stuff like that because I was so entertained by this audiobook. I will say that Czar can be a little bit annoying. He's a little frustrating, but this is the first book in a series and he has a long way to go. He's going to grow immensely throughout the course of this book. And Wish also has a lot of room to grow in this, but Czar is the one that I think has the most room to grow, just because he would annoy me sometimes. He's very pick-me, and that could grate on my nerves. But in the end, I really enjoyed this. I read this extremely quickly. Is it the most memorable thing that I've ever read? Not really. I have a hard time remembering the characters' names. There are a lot of side characters that the characters meet that I just did not even bother to learn their names. So when I continue on with the series, which I do plan on doing at some point, I'm gonna have to try to refresh all the characters in my mind before I go on. I ended up giving this book like 3.5 stars. It was a fun time and exactly what I needed at the time that I read it. The second book that I read in 2021 is The Lost Tide Warriors by Catherine Doyle. This is the second book in the Stormkeeper's Island series. I did an individual book review for the first book, so I'll leave that up at the card symbol if you want to check it out. I think I read the first book a couple of years ago now, and I really enjoyed it. It got me all teared up. So I definitely was curious about how the series would continue along, so I picked up the second one when I was sent an arc of it by Bloomsbury. If you guys don't know, in the first book we follow the main character Fionn and his older sister as they go to visit their grandfather on an island called Arranmore. Arranmore is a real island. You okay? But in this fictional world or whatever, the old families that have lived on Arranmore for a really long time have some type of magical connection to this island. His grandfather is the Stormkeeper. Basically, they have like magical candles and stuff like that. In this one, the main plot of the trilogy series really ramps up. Arranmore is in a lot of trouble because these dangerous beings are gaining power, and it's just very dangerous. In this one specifically, our main characters are having to try to get the Tide Warriors on their side to protect Arranmore, because otherwise everyone's gonna die, basically. I really enjoyed this book. Similar to how I got teared up in the first book, I got very teared up in this book as well. For some reason, Catherine Doyle just knows how to pull on my heartstrings and I get all just choked up a little bit. There's a new character that's added in here as well that I was really enjoying, a character named Sam. I thought that he really balanced Fionn out really well. He also really balanced out just our group of characters, Fionn, his grandfather, his sister, and all of the other characters that are involved in here. Sam doesn't have any type of long-term long-term history with the island, so he doesn't have the like magical connection to this island that some of the other characters have. So I really liked seeing how he was going about dealing with all of the problems that were involved in this book. One thing I really did not love was Fion's sister in this. She treated Fion so terribly, and then it's all fine, and I just didn't like that, because Fion's sister should have had some type of repercussion for treating Fion so awful, but there isn't really. And so because of that, I really didn't like Fion's sister, and I was kind of hoping Fion's sister would fail even though she was on the right side. So that was just kind of weird. Overall, I really enjoyed this one, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Hopefully I will be reading the third, and I believe final book at some point soon, whenever that comes out. The next book I read was Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This was the House Salt book club pick for January? If you guys don't know, this follows a character named Bree. At the beginning of the book, Bree's mother has previously passed away, and she decides to like early enroll in her mother's alma mater for like college. She and her best friend Alice end up getting into this program and go off and start college basically early, and you just follow Bree as she's going to this school. The problem is that Bree doesn't believe that her mother's death was an accident, and she also starts to get swept up in this like secret organization, like secret, what are those called? A secret society, that's what they're called. So she ends up getting swept up with this secret society, and she learns more about what the heck is going on behind the scenes and how these people have the abilities that they have, all of that stuff. We did a live show for this book that goes into full spoilers, all of our thoughts on all of the things, all the characters, all just everything. So I will leave that up in the card symbol as well as down below. Ooh, Jet's mad. If you want to check it out. I ended up really enjoying this one. I really liked all the characters. I liked all the magic. I liked learning about how all of these things were woven together. This has a lot of Arthurian elements in it, and I think that those elements were really entertaining. I can't say that they're well done because I'm not super familiar with Arthurian legends, but I think that it was good. I enjoyed seeing the topics that this explores, and I had a friggin' blast. One last thing that I'll say that I really enjoyed was I really enjoyed seeing Bree interact with all of these different characters. Her main connection into the secret society is a boy named Nick, so I enjoyed seeing how their friendship relationship would grow and change throughout the course of this book. I really loved Alice and her friendship with Bree. I will definitely be continuing along. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I would recommend it if it at all sounds interesting to you. After that, I picked up Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow, which is the third book in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. If you guys don't know, this is quickly becoming one of my favorite middle grade series. It follows a girl named Morgan Crow. At the beginning of the first book, you find out that she is like a cursed child. She's supposed to die on whatever birthday is coming up next. Instead of dying, she's whisked away by a man named Jupiter North. You find out that she has the opportunity to compete in this tournament style competition to try to earn a place in the Wondrous Society. If she's able to do that, she will survive. If she's not, and she doesn't get picked, she will have to go back home and die. Throughout the course of the first book, you're seeing Morgan go through all of these trials. To pass, you have to have some type of special talent or ability, and she doesn't have one, which is a problem. But obviously her story continues, so we're on to book 3. In this one, there is a disease or a virus or something that is going around, but it only is affecting Wunimals, which are basically magical animals that can communicate. They're very intelligent. They're a part of society. What this disease is doing is it's stripping their intelligence away, and basically they're becoming just wild animals. And because this is a middle grade, Morgan is trying to figure out what the heck is happening, how to stop it, all of that. I ended up really enjoying this one as well. I think I've given every single book in this series 5 stars so far. This one is no exception. I was really enjoying Morgan. I really enjoyed seeing her relationships tested. Some grow, some are more strained. I really enjoyed seeing the authority of this world questioned, which I really enjoyed seeing because so far, it hasn't really been tested all that much in the books. I enjoyed seeing it finally being tested and explored. I really enjoyed seeing Morgan learn more about her situation. I don't want to go into more details other than that because I don't want to spoil anything. And at the end of the day, this is just an incredibly fun, magical romp, and I had a friggin' blast. 5 stars. The next book that I picked up is The Last Sun by Katie Edwards. This is the first book in the Tarot Sequence series, and it is an adult fantasy romance. If you guys don't know, this book follows a character named Rune. At the beginning of the book, you find out that Rune and his people are, I believe, Atlanteans. And still at the beginning of the book, you find out that the I'm gonna call them Atlanteans, but I'm not sure if that's the right word, use a lot of their magic to create a new Atlantis. And so now they have some connection and communication with regular humans. Rune is the sole surviving member of his court. In this world, there are different courts. There's like the Sun Court. There is the, I almost said like Aphrodite, but there's like the like romancy sex court. So there are a bunch of different courts, and there's different families that are in charge of each one. Rune is the only surviving one from his, which is the Sun Court, and so he has some abilities that are related to that. Still at the beginning of the book, you find out that when one of these courts is doing bad things or is doing illegal things, the other courts will step in and knock them down a peg. At the beginning of the book, you see an entire court basically getting murdered. So that's intense all on its own. During that whole situation, Rune is roped in by a different character to basically protect this delivery. It turns out it's a human, so he has to protect this descendant of this other fallen court. This book is a little difficult to talk about because there's basically two books in one. The first part of it is kind of all of that, where Rune is trying to figure out how he's going to go about raising this kid. He's not technically a kid, he's like an old teenager, but still. That is almost one story all on its own. And then later on is when Rune gets hired to figure out what's going on with this other character named Adam. It says on the back of the book that Rune is hired by Lady Justice to find and save her son Adam, and you follow that situation. Adam is the love interest in the story. So yeah, I will say that there's like two full books in here, and the second book is the one that has the romance in it, if that makes sense. I ended up really enjoying this novel. I really liked all of these different courts. I really liked learning about New Atlantis. I really liked learning about how Rune was going to navigate his contacts to try to get things done. There are people that don't like him very much and are actively trying to work against him, figuring out what's going on with Adam and why he is missing. You meet a lot of very interesting characters, and I really liked learning about all of their different powers. One of my favorite characters in this is a character named Quinn. Quinn is Adam's little brother, I believe. Quinn has the ability to see different possibilities, like different possible futures, and I just really loved him. He's a little quirky, and I love myself some quirky characters. There's an owner of like a bar that I also was really enjoying, so I was really enjoying the characters in this. I also read this extremely quickly and was thoroughly entertained the whole time. I thought that the writing was really solid. There was only a couple of times where I was like, oh, that's a mistake, because the character that Rune is stuck with protecting or whatever, his nickname gets dropped accidentally really early on in the book, and then later is when the nickname is actually established. So there's just a couple of mistakes, but I really enjoyed this, and I ended up giving this book like 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed seeing what was going on, learning about this mystery situation, what was happening, where Adam was, why was he taken, stuff like that. I was really enjoying all of that, and I think that it has set up really well for the rest of the series. There are bigger and badder things happening in the background, and I am very much looking forward to seeing those come to light. Again, I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. Definitely recommend if it sounds interesting to you. After that, I listened to the audiobook for Once Ghosted, Twice Shy by Alyssa Cole. This is a novella that's set in her Reluctant Royal series. The first book is called A Princess in Theory. This short story follows a side character, Lakotsi, which is the assistant to the prince, Thabizo, who is in the first book. This one is set a little after the first book, but what it is kind of exploring happens during the first book. During the course of the first book, you find out that Lakotsi kind of has this fling that happens in the background of the story, and this explores that more. Basically, Lakotsi wants to know why this girl called things off between them. You just follow that. I ended up really enjoying this. I had a good time. It's a short story, so it's obviously not a full-length novel. You don't get the space to explore a whole lot other than the main topic that it's trying to cover. I also will say that there's some pretty bad insta-love in this, but the novella is self-aware of that. Lakotsi and Fabiola's relationship happens very quickly, but I just really enjoyed seeing them and seeing them find happiness and all of that stuff. So I ended up giving this like 3.5, 4 stars. I thought it was really cute, and I enjoyed seeing Lakotsi find love. The next book in the series that I need to read is the third one, I believe. We'll see how that one is when I get to it. After that, I read If I Ever Get Out of Here by Eric Gansworth. This one follows a Native American boy named Lewis Blake. At the beginning of the book, you find out that he lives on a reservation in New York, much like the author did, and he goes to the local public high school. Lewis is actually the only person in his section of his grade that is from the reservation. His grade is divided into like the different categories, like smartness categories, I guess. So he's in the top one with all of the smartest kids in the class, and he's the only person from the reservation that's in that section. You quickly find out that Lewis's family is not very wealthy and his house is pretty dilapidated. He lives with his mother and his uncle. Yeah, their house has a lot going wrong with it. You also find out that there's a pretty big bully at the school named Evan, and Evan is causing a lot of problems for Lewis. He bullies Lewis mostly because Lewis is Native American. Still at the beginning of the book, a new kid comes into the class named George. George is a military kid. George and Lewis kick off a friendship really easily and really early on. But because George doesn't know anything about Lewis, doesn't know anything about his dilapidated house, doesn't really seem to care that he's Native American, Lewis decides that he is going to keep some secrets from George just to try to make everything easier. This is a YA contemporary novel, and I would almost dare to describe it more as like a slice of life book. You follow Lewis as he's just in this one specific time in his life, and you follow his and George's friendship. I really enjoyed this novel. I gave it 4 stars, but I definitely can understand why people wouldn't enjoy it as much. The story in here is quite slow. There isn't anything that's really being built up to. The characters are just living their lives and are just going to high school and dealing with bullies and dealing with first loves and friendships and all of that stuff. There isn't something in the future that they're working towards. There isn't like a prom that they're trying to, make something happen, or there isn't a deadline that they're working towards. So there isn't anything being built up, and there's not as much tension in the novel to keep you reading. And because of that, I understand why it is a slower read and why people would not enjoy it as much. But I do think that this book tackles exactly what it aims to tackle. It addresses a lot of different issues, racism especially because Lewis is picked on because he is Indigenous. It also covers a lot of topics like growing up in poverty and the complications that that brings. In this book, Lewis has a lot of shame. It's why he doesn't really tell George about his living situation and details about his life, etc., etc. There are a lot of heavy topics tackled in here, and I think that they're done well, but because it's so heavy, it's a slow read and it's emotionally taxing. There are also a lot of references to the Beatles and Paul McCartney especially in here. The main character and his friend George love the Beatles, and every single chapter is either a Paul McCartney song or is a Beatles song. I don't particularly love the Beatles, so I wasn't able to relate to his love for music, but I was able to relate to Lewis's reasons for investing so much emotion and energy into music. It gives him a chance to escape his reality, which is a big reason why a lot of readers read. So I think that maybe you won't relate to his love for the Beatles and for guitar and stuff like that, but you will be able to relate to that motivation behind his love for those things, if that makes sense. Again, I really enjoyed this. I think that it accomplishes what it was set out to accomplish really well, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. But I do understand why students forced to read this book would not enjoy it. It's one of those where you're gonna enjoy it if you decide to pick it up on your own, but if you're told to read it, you might not enjoy it, so I get that, but again, I gave this 4 stars. I know that there's also a book that follows him after this, or follows the side character after this, and I've seen people read that book without reading this one first, and they have no idea what's going on. So I definitely recommend picking this book up before you pick up that other book. I can't remember what the book is called, but it has a guitar on the front, I believe. Put that in your brain for later. After that, I picked up The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos. In this one, we follow a main character named Sam. You quickly find out that in this version of our world, magic is everywhere, basically. Everyone has the ability to do magic, but most people don't do it. You find out that people really view magic as like a bad thing, which is kind of odd, but that's a thing in this world. When I was reading it, the magic system to me felt like just a regular trait that someone has or an ability that someone has. For instance, being able to draw. Everyone has some amount of ability to draw. Some are better than others naturally. And if you work at drawing and you draw a lot and you practice drawing, you're going to get better at drawing. And here, magic is the same way. Everyone has the ability to do all of these different types of magics to various degrees. And if you practice those magics, you get better in them. And if you overtax yourself, you can get hurt or even die, kind of like working out. If you work out a lot, you might hurt yourself. And if you work out so much that you completely tax your body, you could die. So that's how magic is in this world. In this book, we follow the main character named Sam. He and his two friends, Delia and James, are the sole 3 members of this like magic club. They compete in magical competitions, and every year they work towards doing better and better in them. You find out that Delia really wants to get into this magic school, this school that will allow her to basically succeed in anything that she wants. All of the people that are in the like FBI of this world have gone to this specific magic school, and because Delia doesn't have a whole lot of money, that's like the only school that she could go to like pursue magic. James, you find out, has been mixed up with some sketchy people over the summer, and it causes problems for their friend group. And Sam is your innocent little bean who has a huge crush on James. Story ensues from there. I'll say that I was really enjoying this. I really liked all the characters. I really liked exploring this world with the magic and how everything was set up. I really enjoyed seeing their high school situation, seeing their friendship situation. All 3 characters are quite insecure in their friendships and have a lot of self-doubt, and a lot of their actions reflect that. I was enjoying all of these things. There's a character named Denver who joins their group, and I really loved him as well. He's just a friggin' cute little cinnamon roll, and I wanted to pinch his cheeks. So I was just really enjoying all of those explorations. While I was reading this, I was like, I don't understand why people are not loving this as much as I'm loving it right now. And then I got to the end, which is incredibly unsatisfying, which was so disappointing. In this book, the characters are building up to compete in this one specific tournament that I believe happens in like November or something of their senior year. So they're all gearing up for this. They're practicing hard. They're trying to figure things out. Obviously, there's the sketchy people that James has gotten them involved with. Delia has a lot of stress because she's trying to get into this school. I was enjoying all the things and building up for this tournament and figuring out the mystery with these sketchy people that have magic and are doing illegal things. But then the ending is incredibly rushed and doesn't actually give you much catharsis. The main thing that bothered me is that there's a whole huge focus on the fact that Sam has this incredibly strong crush on his friend James. James starts dating a girl during the course of this book. That crush is never addressed, which is so weird to me. I don't know why it wasn't. It's just kind of glossed over and gone, I guess. I just didn't like that at all. I would understand the ending of this book if this was the first book in a series, but because it's not and it's a standalone, things weren't wrapped up very well in my opinion. I would have liked to see a confrontation scene between Sam and James so that their feelings can get laid out and worked out. I was okay with some of these other things being unfinished, but that one in particular just bothered me. I ended up dropping the rating for this down to like 3 and 3.5 stars because I really enjoyed it for the most part, but the ending brought it down so much for me. I was a little disappointed. I forgot to add that there's another point of view that you get from a girl named Liv. At the beginning of the book, Liv joins the bad guys, so you get her perspective a couple of times throughout the book. And also one other thing that Eliopoulos does really well is that uneasy feeling when you're around people that you don't know and you don't know how they're going to react to you being the person that you are. Meaning like LGBTQ plus people. You never know when you're out in public and some stranger finds out that you're part of the LGBT plus community, how they're going to react. You're going to have good reactions, you're going to have really bad reactions, and the uneasiness that holds was well done in here. But again, I was disappointed by the ending, so I gave it like 3.5 stars. The next things that I read are actually the first 4 volumes in a manga series, and that series is Spy Family by Satsuya Indo. I read volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you guys don't know, this is a manga series that follows a character named Twilight, or his like agent name is Twilight. At the beginning of the first volume, you find out that he has to go on this undercover mission to get close to this guy who's doing bad things. I can't exactly remember what he is doing. To do that, Twilight goes undercover as Lloyd Forger. He adopts a little girl named Anya, and he marries a woman named Yor. And you find out quickly that he's a spy, obviously. Anya can read people's minds, and Yor is an assassin. And so that dynamic is a really fun one to follow because all of them have their secrets and none of them know them, except for Anya knows all the secrets because she can read people's minds. It is just hilarious to follow this spy having to deal with a little girl named Anya who can read his mind, but he doesn't know it, and also like have a relationship with Yor, who's an assassin who has her own secrets. And then in the 4th volume, there's a dog that comes into the picture, and he is not exactly your ordinary dog. I gave the 1st volume in this series 5 stars, and then I think I gave 2, 3, and 4 all 4 stars. I'm really enjoying this. The 1st volume especially is so good. It's so well paced. It's so funny. It's just really well balanced, and I've really enjoyed learning about these different characters, learning about this school. Anya is my favorite character, obviously, because she is just the cutest thing, and I enjoy seeing her interactions with her classmates at school. She's trying to become one of the best students, but she's actually not a very good student, and she doesn't like learning, but she's trying to learn so that she can succeed in helping Lloyd on his mission. All the characters are great, and I just really enjoyed this. If you want to know what some of the artwork looks like, it looks like that. Here's another example of what some of the artwork looks like. This is really early on in Lloyd and Anya's relationship, I guess, like father-daughter relationship. But again, I had a really good time while reading this, and I definitely recommend it if you're into shonen manga. Next, I read Age of Assassins by R.J. Barker. This is the first book in a series, a trilogy. I'm not exactly sure which. The Wounded Kingdom series trilogy. In this one, you follow a character called Girton Clubfoot. He is the apprentice to an assassin. At the beginning of the book, they are called to this castle keep. They are basically forced into helping the queen find out who is trying to assassinate her son. During this story, Girton has to go undercover as a nobleman. He is undercover as the youngest son of this distant lord that no one really knows about. He just is tasked with trying to get to know all of the different noble boys that are training to be knights, while his master is doing a bunch of sleuthing as a jester. I ended up enjoying this one as well. I believe I gave this one 3 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed following Girton. I enjoyed seeing his friendships grow. I enjoyed seeing him meeting all of these different characters and learning more about this world. He is called Mage Touched or something like that because he has a bad leg. He has a crippled leg. Sorcerers in this world are viewed as evil because when they use their powers, they drain the earth of its vitality, basically leaving these huge sections of dead land that can't be used for anything. My main problem with this book ended up being that for being an assassin, he's not very good at being an assassin. And I know that he's an assassin's apprentice, but at the beginning of the book, his master says that he's good enough to go off on his own, like he could be an assassin all on his own. And I just don't think that's true. Because we're learning about this world with Girton, it was kind of weird that he didn't know a lot of this stuff already. He's traveled around this land with his master for a long time, assassinating people. People that get hired as assassins would naturally know a lot of the like court intrigue that's happening because the people are hiring these assassins to kill other members of these different courts and stuff like that. So I just thought it was kind of strange that Girton didn't know a lot of the people or how a lot of the families viewed each other. He's also not very sneaky. Like he's not very good at keeping his cover, which is so strange for an assassin because if people know you're an assassin, it's going to be a lot harder to do your job. So my main complaint about this is that the main character is supposed to be an assassin. He's not very good at being an assassin. And there's also not a whole lot of assassinations happening. I'm trying to think if there's even one single assassination that happens in this whole book, and I'm drawing a blank. I think in a flashback there's one, but that's like it. So other than that complaint, I did really enjoy this. I liked the world. I liked learning about the characters. I liked seeing characters get their just desserts, and when I finished it, I feel like the ending of this book bumped up the novel a lot for me. I really, really enjoyed the ending of this. It's very fast-paced. It's very fun. A lot of stuff happens at the end of this book. So I'm motivated to continue just because of the ending of this book. If you're looking for more assassin stories, If this at all sounds interesting to you, I recommend picking it up. I think that there was a lot of things that happened towards the end of this book that will make the series a lot more exciting. So I'm definitely looking forward to finding out more in book 2. This one was a little slow and didn't have as much assassinations as I was hoping for, but I did enjoy it, and I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. The next thing that I read in 2021 is this is kind of an epic love story by Case and Callender. This is a young adult contemporary MM romance. In this one, you follow a character named Nate. At the beginning of the book, you find out that Nate's best friend turned girlfriend turned best friend is now dating someone new, and Nate has to deal with all of that because his feelings for her didn't just disappear. But Flo is determined to help Nate find a new significant other. You just follow all of that unfolding. At the beginning of the book, Nate's childhood friend Ollie moves back to town, and that kind of shakes things up. I did an individual book review for this book talking about my pros and cons for it, so I will leave that up in the card symbol if you want to check it out. I don't go into any spoilers or anything like that, so you're safe there. I ended up really enjoying this. I'm a big fan of Case and Callender's writing style. I really like reading their books. I stayed up and read this whole book in one night because I was that invested. I really enjoyed following these incredibly messy, flawed characters that do screw up. I just thought it was really realistic. Teenagers fall in love and out of love really quickly, and they don't deal with those things super maturely all the time, and I thought that that was really well done in here. I will say that a lot of people don't really like this book because the characters aren't as faithful to their partners as they should be, but I thought that that was pretty realistic for the age that these characters are. Not a super good thing to do, but is realistic. So in the end, I think I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed every book that I've read by Kaysen so far, so I'm looking forward to reading Queen of the Conquered next, which I heard is very dark and you hate the main character. So I'm curious to see how that one will go. And the 15th book that I read in 2021 is Stalking Darkness by Lynn Flewelling. This is the second book in the Night Runner series, and it is an adult male-male fantasy romance, although it's pretty light on the romance. It's more just fantasy than it is romance. In this series, you're following a character named Alec. At the beginning of the first book, he is rescued by a character named Saragill from being executed. He decides that he's going to, I don't know, I guess like kind of tag along with his rescuer, and Saragill ends up being a bit of a like spy, I guess, and he works really closely with higher ups in the city that he lives in. Alec becomes his apprentice, friend, lover situation. And in this one, obviously, you're continuing that story. In this one, Alec, Saragill's like long-term friend, Meekum, and Saragill's mentor named Nysander find out about a different situation that they need to address. And it is quite a chunky one, so a lot does happen in this book. It's almost like 2 books in one. This book took me so long to read, and I believe it's because of the format. I don't particularly enjoy reading mass market paperbacks because I hate breaking spines, so then I end up reading them like this, and the writing is super tiny. So I started this book back in August of 2020, and I finished it in April of 2021. That's how long it took me to read this. And again, that's on me because I wasn't enjoying the experience of physically reading this like this. My library didn't have the audiobook for this one, which is how I read the first book. So I think going forward in the series, I will be reading the ebooks, which I also don't like doing, but it's better than reading a mass market paperback. I thought this book was really well done. I really liked it. I really liked everything that happens. There's so much going on in this, and I really enjoyed seeing all of the characters just interacting with each other and learning more about the evil presences in this world. It is a bit of a slower one, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it if it all sounds interesting to you. I was pitched the first book as being like an MM romance, and there's like no romance in that book. You can tell that Alec and Saragill have some sort of connection. You don't exactly know what the nature of that relationship is going to be, but in this one is when it starts to be a bit more of a romance. So I was glad to see that. But if you're not expecting that to happen until much later in the series, I think then you won't be expecting it early on, and it won't be as frustrating for you because I was like, just get together already. But in the meantime, I was enjoying all of the fantasy elements. I enjoyed this world. Nysander is like a really, really powerful wizard, and he's the head of this organization of wizards, I guess. I don't know. Magic users. I really enjoyed seeing Sergil and Alec do all of their sleuthing and all of their spying. And here you also follow Meekum's daughter, Becca, who joins the military and is a decently good soldier. So you follow her as she is giving you the perspective of the like everyday regular citizen of this world, because the different countries are not super peaceful at the present moment. And so you get to see her go into some of these skirmishes. I wasn't as invested in Becca because she didn't have as dynamic of characters surrounding her. If she had had more entertaining characters that she could bounce off of, it would have been a lot more fun. Meekum, Alex, Sergil, Nysander, they all have very distinct and fun personalities, and I like when they are interacting. Becca didn't really have that as much, so I didn't really like her chapters as much, but I think she's going to become a more important character as the series goes along. So I'm sure I'll get invested in her at some point, but so far, I was just mainly here for my boy Alec. Again, I really enjoyed this one. I wish it hadn't taken me 8 months to read, but I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. So those are the first 15 things that I read in 2021. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what you've been reading. If you've read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts were on them, or if you have any recommendations for me, leave those down in the comments. Anything else you want me to know, leave it down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye. Nikki, say bye. Go boy.